All right, my friend, welcome to the next episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, teaching you how to maximize your results with minimalist approaches to diet and exercise. Matt Schifferly here, founder of the Red Delta Project and author of the books that sponsor these episodes like Grind Style Calisthenics, Smart Bodyweight Training. Today, I'm going to share with you the essential things you need to know to help you maximize your ability to build muscle and strength with bodyweight training. So the first thing to understand is that building muscle and strength with bodyweight training is exactly the same with building it from weights in principle. I say in principle because here at Red Delta Project, one of the unique things about our approach to fitness is we take a principle-based approach to fitness. Because ultimately, your ability to get results does not depend on the method that you're using. Most of the things in our fitness culture are method-based. You ask people how to get in shape, and they'll say, follow this diet, do this program, do this exercise and stuff. And it's not bad advice, but ultimately that's not what's most important, because fitness is a natural process. It's governed by the laws of physics, the laws of nature. So your ability to build muscle and lose weight and improve your golf swing depend on how well do you understand those natural principles that are ultimately in charge of your results. And to put this into perspective on how this works, refer to the analogy in my first book, Fitness Independence, which is all about those principles. So imagine you need to get to a certain destination, a goal, right? Like the airport. I need to get to the airport. How do I do it? Now, a principle-based approach would say the airport is up north. You need to head north. Here's the path to take. Go on this highway, take exit 15, right? That's principle-based approach. Now, a method-based approach would focus on the actual vehicle you use. So if you said, how do I get to the airport? And they say, you need to drive a Honda 4Runner. No word on how to actually get there. It's just drive a Honda 4Runner. And someone says, no, Subarus. You need to drive a Subaru because it's four-wheel drive. So don't buy, foreign, buy domestic America. Ford F-150, best ever. It's like, don't buy a pickup truck. The gas mileage sucks in those things. You need something that's more economical. So we debate all these little myriad details about different methods, but ultimately none of that matters very much because you still don't know how to get to the airport. And that's often when we debate things like bodyweight training versus weights and everything like that. The actual method you use doesn't determine your success. Your ability to identify the principles of your objective are what determine your success. When it comes to building muscle and strength, you just need to say, all right, how do I work my muscles progressively harder over time? You do that, you're going to get bigger and stronger, regardless of what your program or exercises or tools look like. Making your muscles work harder is your number one principle. So we need to understand this, because if we change our approach to that principle, then we're going to get different results, and we're going to think it's based on the method when actually it's because our orientation to the principle has changed. And let me give you an example of one I often see. People are like in the gym, and they're on like a bench press weight machine. And they're like, yeah, okay, this is good. And I'm adding weight, and I'm adding reps, and I'm adding weight. So they're progressively working their muscles over time. This is good. But then they say, I'm going to do bodyweight training for a while. What's your plan? I'm going to do 1,000 push-ups a day. Or I'm trying to follow this app that's going to get me to do 100 push-ups in a single shot. Sounds good, but you just completely changed your game plan. That was like saying, I know how to get to the airport in a car. Now that I'm driving a truck, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. And then you end up lost and further away from the airport, and you think the vehicle is to blame, but actually it's because you totally changed your entire route on which you were going. Because trying to do 100 repetitions is a completely different game plan. That's like getting under a bench press and saying, I'm going to try and bench press this bar 100 times. It's just the empty bar, but my goal is to bench press it 100 times. People are like, yeah, but I thought you wanted to get stronger. Shouldn't you add weight? Nope, 100 reps. That's the thing that I need. You have a totally different game plan, even though the method would be the same from what you were using before. But the second thing to understand is how we do that is actually different, because bodyweight training is a different vehicle from weightlifting. So back to the car analogy, right? Say you know how to get to the airport in a car, and then someone's like, oh, okay, I need to get to the airport. I don't have a car. And someone's like, here, take my motorcycle. You get on the motorcycle and you're like, this is the worst designed vehicle ever. There's no steering wheel. And like you're pushing down on the brake, thinking it's the gas pedal, and you're pulling on the clutch. And you're like, how do I operate this? And you dump it off to the side and you're like, that's the worst vehicle in the world. You can't get anywhere on that. not knowing that you're supposed to use it in a different format of operation. It's the same thing with bodyweight training. If you take weight training methods into bodyweight training, you're gonna often run into problems, and vice versa, right? Same thing. One of the biggest ones I often hear is people like, okay, so if I do this exercise for weights, then how do I do the exact same thing or hit the lateral deltoid with bodyweight training? It's like, no, you're applying that method. You're trying to drive a motorcycle like a car. It doesn't quite work that way. You need to drive a motorcycle like a motorcycle, but still go along the same exact path. And understanding how to do that, the most basic way is that when it comes to progressive work on the muscles with weights, you roughly keep your technique the same, right? So if you're doing bench press, you pretty much keep your body moving the exact same way, but you adjust the weight that you're lifting. With bodyweight training, your weight of you stays roughly the same, but you change your technique. That's the biggest difference to understand, which is why it really pays to be well-versed in progressive calisthenics theory. How do you adjust your technique in order to adjust your resistance and your ability to challenge your muscles with the exercise? You understand that, you can still satisfy the exact same principle, get to the same destination that you want to get to. And that's why I always recommend books like Convict Conditioning, my book Smart Bodyweight Training, Grind Style Calisthenics does that as well. Understanding how to adjust your technique to progress or regress the resistance on your muscles is essential for understanding how to still progressively work them over time. Two other things that I highly recommend is get yourself a simple suspension setup. This could be either gymnastics rings, or it could be like a TRX, or I like my RT17 that I've been using a lot now. You can check out my review here, or there's a link down below if you want to just check it straight out. It's like $30. It's one of the cheapest but well-made trainers out on the market today. But what a suspension setup does is it gives you a couple of things: a much broader range of easier progression. So you could take exercises that seem easy and make them much more difficult. Or you could take exercises that seem almost impossible and make them much easier and everywhere in between. So it makes it a lot easier to progress or regress your technique and therefore the resistance on your muscles. The other advantage is it also allows you to mimic many of the weight machine and free weight exercises you would do in a gym, but with bodyweight style. So if you like chest flies, for example, is not much of a way to do that with just a hard floor. Like you could slide on towels and stuff, but with a good suspension setup, you now have a lot of adjustment and the ability to do chest flies, so you can mimic a lot of those of your favorite exercises to target certain areas of your muscles to work a particular muscle group progressively harder over time. And then the other thing to be aware of course, is weighted calisthenics. Weighted calisthenics is something that a lot of people gravitate towards, but they do it in a little bit of a haphazard fashion. And this has certainly been my case when I first started training, because when it comes to progressive calisthenics, one of the big advantages is when you use advanced techniques, you develop much more than just brute strength. You also develop things like mobility, stability, and coordination. But the downside to progressive calisthenics is you need to also develop mobility, stability, and coordination. And I don't mean to be offensive in this, but a lot of our approaches to exercise in the gym have evolved over time to sort of dumb down our approaches to exercise so that you can do leg raises without needing back support from a hanging bar position. We got those nice little like captain's chairs and stuff. You can progressively work your chest without having to improve your shoulder stability and all these other sorts of things, which isn't entirely bad. It's good. It's very satisfying. But when a lot of people get into progressive calisthenics, they run against some of these weaknesses that they may have been glossing over. My shoulder stability sucks. Like that was my case on my right side. Or, my mobility in my hip is terrible, so I can't really work my legs very hard with progressive leg training and stuff. So these are things that need to be addressed, but one of the ways around this is with weighted calisthenics. Because when you add extra weight, you're adding resistance and therefore potentially making the muscles work harder without having to develop more coordination and mobility and stability and all these other sorts of things. So it's a little bit of almost a hack or a shortcut. So weighted calisthenics is fine, but we want to approach it in a smart way. First is I recommend starting with the main three. Now you can apply extra weight to any body weight training at all, but the best ways to do it are weighted dips, weighted pull-ups, and weighted unilateral leg exercises like lunges or Bulgarian split squats. And I detail more of these in my first PDF ebook that's free at reddeltaproject.com, The Triad Muscle Revolution, on why I picked these. But basically, they're the easiest to load, they're the safest to load, and they're the most effective to load as well. And they hit every major muscle group in the entire body as well. So they do great things for developing. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment for them as well. So I recommend focusing on those as your main weighted exercises. 2 is, instead of going for more weight, still keep technical proficiency your number one objective. So the saying I always use is heavy technique, light weight, rather than the other way around that I was doing it, where I was trying to go with heavy weight, but I had to use light technique. So this means as much range of motion as you possibly can, pausing at the top and the bottom, and even using a little bit of progressive calisthenics theory, like keeping your hands and your feet as close to your center line as possible. That way the technique stays very challenging and you're not going to need nearly as much weight to actually load up your muscles with a good amount of resistance. That also gives you the advantage of saying, all right, I don't have weights, but what can I use around the house? Because I only need about 10, 15, 20 pounds. And you can probably find something around you, like maybe a rock or something, that you can use as extra weight, and you don't need to find some gym or buy a lot of home equipment to have a whole lot of extra weight. So those are my top tips. If you want to learn more, check out my books, of course, Grind Style Calisthenics, Smart Bodyweight Training, Fitness Independence, for those principles and stuff. You can find it all down below in the link if you're watching this on YouTube, or just go reddeltaproject.com. And also don't forget Triad Muscle Revolution is a good resource for weighted calisthenics training as well. Thank you again so much for listening. I hope you're all staying happy and healthy out there. Stay strong, lead by example, and don't forget, be fit and live free.